Thank you so much for joining us for this first ever event, LA's Best Virtual Town Hall, inviting all 2,000 plus LA's Best team members together, quote, in one place. My name's Eric Gurna. I'm the president and CEO of LA's Best, and it's my pleasure to welcome you. My apologies in advance if I was just staring blankly at the screen for 20 seconds. There was a delay with the stream and I didn't know when to start. But here we go. We wanted to hold this event because during this unprecedented crisis that we're all facing across Los Angeles and the world, we wanted to make sure that all of us at LA's Best truly are connected and that we are able to connect and converse about what we're going through, and also to hear from some wise and important speakers who will help guide us through this unprecedented period of time. I first of all just want to start out by saying how proud I am to work for this organization. Over the last couple of months, as many people in LA have felt frozen, have felt stuck, LA's Best has been in action. And as part of the City of Los Angeles, the Mayor's Office, the Los Angeles Unified School District, and especially our partners at Beyond the Bell, we have been playing an active role in getting much needed food to families, connecting with each other to make sure that we use this time wisely, and considering who we need to be there for young people at this time and in the future. And so I couldn't be more proud to be part of this organization. I take no credit for any of that action. I give all credit to the person that I'm introducing next. To say a few words is our Chief Operating Officer, Debbie Loxton. Debbie?
Thanks, Eric. LA's Best family. Wow. This is just such a great thrill and a wonderful opportunity for us to get to connect with you and to just sort of be in our presence together. And this isn't a time for us right now where we're able to really think about our work and how we do it and what we lean into and what we move towards. And you know, Margaret Wheatley says that chaos is partnered with order. And I just think that we have really taken this opportunity in LA's Best to actually take something that's very chaotic and partner it with our best hearts and our best thinking and our best opportunities. And we've stepped forward to do this work together. And you know, part of change is being willing to be disturbed. And we are actually disturbed in so many ways, and yet we're still a cohesive LA's Best family. And for that, I owe all of my gratitude to all of you who have worked so hard these last weeks to really do the work that's so important to us and do the work that actually is making a significant difference in not only Los Angeles, but the world. And I have the great pleasure of introducing to you someone who is, well, he's one of my heroes, and he is someone who knows exactly what your work is. He knows what it's like to be on the front lines. He knows what it's like to do the heavy lifting. He knows what it's like to advocate. And he's one of the best advocates for change I know. He takes into account everything that has to do with what's important and from the heart. He absolutely supports social emotional learning and social justice. And he's my friend. And so I'm honored to introduce to you the Director for Expanded Learning for the state of California, from the California Department of Education, Mr. Michael Funk.
Thank you, Debbie. I might have to have you introduce me to some of my folks here at the Department of Education. It's very warm and generous. No, I got a great bunch of colleagues here, and I can tell you that you used the word hero, Debbie. I think I'm speaking to a whole lot of heroes right now. I've always held deeply in my over 20 years of running an organization much smaller than LA's Best, but certainly doing the same mission critical work in San Francisco. The heroes in our organization were the site coordinators and the staff that were working directly with the children and the families. And I could tell that every day when my office was actually in a community center and we didn't have a whole lot of walls. And so I was around kids and parents the whole time. And it was that chaos, Debbie. But as I would go to visit many of the schools in our neighborhood, and I would see people come up to pick up their children, I would see them linger around the staff and they would have questions. They would strike up a conversation, and many of them would bring some piece of mail from some government entity that they didn't quite understand, and talk to the staff person, can you help me understand this? What is this? And what I sensed over time was very deep trusting relationships built with people who didn't quite know who to trust. And at a time when our institutions weren't treating them with a lot of respect. And that still is the case today. We have, I watched your video, the LA's Best video. I do a weekly video with the California After School Network. And I'm starting to invite and show examples of across the state of people who are doing the right thing. And it was inspiring to show the LA's Best video yesterday, to see exactly what I was talking about in action, about people who, it was clear that what was being done, and the food distribution was much more than handing out food. It was being a presence for a community that's trying to navigate trauma. And it's having a place to go with people they can trust to pick up food is much more than food safety. It is emotional support. It is it's mental health support. It is somehow giving them there's a little bit of structure in their lives where they've lost most of the structure. If they've lost their job, kids aren't going to school. Here's somewhere I can go and see a human that I know truly cares about me. And I can't overstate the importance of that. So thank you. You are the heroes. And Eric and Deb, thanks for having me on here to be able to say that. I care so deeply about it. I fight for your ability to do that every day. There are so many hurdles that we had to get out of the way when the pandemic struck to allow you the flexibility to do what you're doing. And I'm telling you, so many of the conversations I've been part of across the state have been from a technical perspective. What can I do? What am I allowed to do? And I charge us to move quickly past the technical to the technical imperative to the moral imperative. The moral imperative is doing all we can do, everything within our means, at any cost, except for our own health, of course. But this is a moral imperative. And there are some out there who are choosing not to do all they can do. And I want to say to you unapologetically that if you're not doing all that you can do, you're causing harm. There's no middle ground. You're either part of the healing process and part of serving with a mission and a passion, or you're causing harm. There's no middle ground. I am inspired by that viewpoint by Ibram Kendi, who wrote a very powerful book on racism. It's How to Be an Anti-Racist, but it's the same principle applied to social justice. And what I saw in the video was an organization as large as LA's Best, working in partnership with LAUSD, stepping up to do what's right. And I applaud you. And we need more of that. We need so much more of that. When we start to reimagine what schools look like when they're opening, expanded learning staff are going to be critical and essential. For the same reason I said, I'm seeing school leaders across the country talk about getting instructional minutes back to students. Yeah, that's the law. But guess what? My daughter, who's at home right now, my third grade daughter, her biggest need is not instructional minutes. Her largest need is somehow emotional and social support during a very traumatic time. And she has all types of support around her, and she's still struggling. And our children, when we come back, remember, the after-school education and safety program is what funds LA's Best, among many other sources of funding. But think about the acronym: After-School Education and Safety Program. So many of us have focused on the education, the E. And what I see in what you're doing now is you're focusing on the safety. And food safety, emotional safety, mental health, the sense of well-being, being part of the community, all those things are so critical. You know, the Aspen Commission on Academic and Social Development said it so clearly, and I feel like we've let that message fade a bit. They're very clear that learning happens in relationship all the time. That's the only way it happens. And what you have are relationships that are so deep and so trusted and so necessary as our children even start to think about coming back to a school, let alone when they come back to school, it doesn't look like any school that they've known before. That's where they need the kind of emotional and social support. So if I haven't said it clear enough or loud enough, you are important, you are valued, you are cherished, and we're going to fight and we're going to do this together. So thank you for letting me say a few words.
Michael, thank you so much. We're inspired by you, and we're grateful to you for all the work that you do all the time, but especially that you've done recently to remove those obstacles to allow us to have the flexibility to do what we're doing now. So I always say we're lucky to have one of us in Sacramento, and we're really blessed for that. So thank you, Michael, and thanks for joining us today. It's now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for this virtual town hall, Dr. Tyrone Howard. I was so thrilled when Dr. Howard agreed to speak with us today because I've long been a fan of his work, recently got to meet him, and was really struck by, the way in which he's able to convey his ideas in a way that feels like he's actually been there. And so turns out he has. Dr. Howard was a classroom teacher in Compton, is a Compton native, so has deep connection to our communities, and a deep passion for equity. I've been hearing a lot that we're all in this together. I'm hearing it so much that it's making me a little crazy. We're all in this together. It's on the Charmin commercial. It's playing at the grocery store on the recording. We're all in this together. And someone pointed out something to me online that was attributed to anonymous, but I thought it was so poignant. It said that we're all in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat. And I think that really, for me, summarizes why we reached out to Dr. Howard, because he can really speak to that. He's an expert in educational equity. He's an author of multiple books, but the one that I wanted to highlight, I admit I haven't read it. I plan to, because the title is so excellent. No More Teaching Without Positive Relationships. No more teaching without positive relationships. We've got to address the social emotional safety, the social emotional growth of our students before we can start to make up for the loss of, quote, learning time, or the loss of, quote, learning. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Howard. He's going to speak to us for a little while, and then we'll come back together to address some of the questions. Several of you had submitted questions through the link. Feel free to continue to do that as Dr. Howard speaks, and we'll be able to address a couple of them, not all of them, but a couple of them. And it is my honor and privilege to introduce Dr. Tyrone Howard, professor from the Graduate School of Education at UCLA, founder and director of the UCLA Black Male Institute. Dr. Howard?
Can't say thank you enough for that introduction. I also want to say that it's just my honor and my sincere pleasure to be here with you all today. Thank you, Debbie, for all your commitment to this work. Michael, thank you for those encouraging and most inspiring words. And I also want to say a big shout out to all the 2,000 plus members of LA's Best team. What you do every single day, serving our children, serving our families, and subsequently serving our communities is invaluable. And so I always start off these kinds of conversations, and this town hall really comes from the bottom of my heart with a big, sincere thank you, thank you, thank you. I think it goes without saying that these have been some unprecedented times. We would have never imagined we'd be in this situation, but nonetheless, you all have stepped up and you've stood in the gap and you've been there for children. You've supported families. You've been the source of support. So I want to just spend a few moments with you in my time with you, just to help us to understand the significance of this moment, the importance of what we are going to be facing, and how we, more than ever, perhaps in our lifetimes, have to be there for children in ways that we never could have imagined. In many ways, I think this is an opportunity as well to hit the reset button, to rethink what really matters, to reevaluate what our priorities are, and to really understand the complex needs that our young people are going to have, because we will not return back to a place that we once knew. We will not see our students as they were prior to this pandemic. We've all been changed. We've all been transformed. And part of what I want us to think about is how we have to engage and listen and empathize in ways with our young people, perhaps in ways that we've never done before. I think we're up to the task. The matter is, are we really going to make sure that no child is left behind in this effort? Let me frame my comments by taking us back a little bit, because I think there's some history that we should understand to understand the gravity and the significance of this moment. Many of you are probably very familiar with what happened on September the 11th, 2001. And we learned a lot of things about tragedy during that time. And we understood that there were some significant aftermath effects of what children went through around 9/11. We learned three different parts of what children were suffering from. We learned that one, that there was media exposure, that the constant media exposure about what happened on 9/11 was having an impact on children in ways that we did not recognize at the time. We also learned that there was personal exposure, that those young people who experienced firsthand the effects of the widespread death that happened on 9/11 had long lasting and in some cases permanent effects. We also learned that there was severe personal effects, meaning that if there were young people who lost a loved one, that they really suffered some deep-seated trauma as a result of what happened during 9/11. Part of what we know is that 9/11 was tragic. There was the unfortunate loss of life. We lost close to 3,000 people on that fateful day. And the children who were affected by that continue to be really in a place where they're trying to still heal, still cope. But what we also learned about that is that there were large degrees of post-traumatic stress disorder that were quite prevalent in many of our young people post 9/11. I'm a researcher, I'm a professor, we study these issues, and now these adults talk about what that moment, what that day meant for them. The number of young people who experience traumatic post disorder continue to rise 4 months, 6 months, years after the event. For those who are most affected by it or who are closest to the communities where 9/11 impacted, we see over a third of the students suffer from some type of PTSD. Understand, we were so unfortunate to lose 3,000 lives on that day. What we are currently witnessing now is something that is on a significantly larger scale than 9/11. What the COVID-19 virus has done is led us to losing almost 90,000 people. I want us to understand that moment, 90,000 people. And this has been a global pandemic. There is no part of our world that's been untouched, no community that has gone unscathed, and really no city that hasn't seen unfortunate loss of life. Our children are witnessing these experiences. They are seeing people losing their lives. And the saddest part of this is that many of them have suffered personal loss. We are seeing children who are losing mothers, fathers, grandparents, aunts, uncles, siblings, all in a very rapid time. And some of these young people are losing loved ones without the opportunity to say goodbye. Some of it's very sudden. It's happening very rapidly. So what we have to understand is that as you serve these young people, they're going to come back to us deeply, deeply affected by the losses that they have either experienced personally or that they've seen around them. So to that end, we have to understand that when children come to us, the mental health effects of corona on children will be significant. It will be more than we've ever imagined, more than what we've ever been able to wrap our heads around. So I want to just build off the points that Eric and Deb and Michael talked about, is that as we talk about reopening schools and reopening our learning communities, and there's been this focus on helping students get back on track academically, it will be really, really wise for us to stop and pause and take a moment and really ask ourselves what's important right now. Let me be clear. I believe that learning is most paramount for all of our students. I believe that the academic growth we want to see each and every child take is valuable beyond words. But I am firm in my conviction when I say I am not convinced that that should be our priority. I'm not convinced that that should be our secondary focus. I'm not even convinced that that should be our tertiary focus. I think that our number one, number two, and number three focus will be helping to help our kids heal from what we are all going through at this moment. Their mental health will be a priority for all of us. The levels of depression that some kids may suffer from, anxiety that some kids may suffer from, the suffering of loss of loved ones is going to be paramount here. Kids are still going to be confused. Kids will feel disconnected. Kids will be angry, sad. Some will isolate themselves. We can only begin to imagine the wide range of effects that we'll see from our young people. And it's important for all of us here to make sure that we're aware of that and to understand the roles that each and every one of us can play in helping to heal our young people. So we have to begin to think outside the box. We have to begin to think in some different ways. We can't go back to the old way of doing things. We can't go to the old way of supporting children. We can't go back to the old ways of supporting families because, as I said a moment ago, we have all been fundamentally touched and fundamentally transformed by what this virus has done. So therefore, we must take on new ways, new approaches, new strategies of being there for our students. The social and emotional health and well-being of our students should be our number one priority at this point in time. So you might say, what does that look like? How do we do it? How does it manifest? Many of you are already doing this work and you have done it for years. And for that, I say thank you, because you've already shown that students need to be supported, that the importance of relationships will be more valuable now than perhaps we've ever realized it before. But as we think about what this looks like, I want us to continue that we must begin to put students' mental health first. We have to do these four things. We have to recognize that students don't always say, I need help. Students don't always communicate to us that they're in need. Students may not always communicate that they're sad, that they're confused, that they're suffering from anxiety. So we must begin to recognize that mental health manifests itself on a lot of different levels. We also have to understand that in many of our communities, and especially many communities of color, issues of mental health are typically taboo. We don't like to talk about them. We don't like to discuss them. We feel like it's not always the right thing to do, the safe thing to do. But we must begin to understand that we have to destigmatize mental health. Telling young people it's okay to talk about their feelings. Telling young people it's okay to talk about their emotions. Expressing to young people the value of them being able to say, I need help, is something that is a sign of strength and not a sign of weakness. We have to empathize as much as we can. This is the time for us to not judge. This is the time for us not to put ourselves on a pedestal and say that we've done things better than others have. This is the time to really be in the emotional vacuum that lots of young people and their families are going through. Empathizing means trying to be in their shoes, trying to understand their emotions, trying to understand their feelings in ways that puts us in there with them so that they feel like they're not alone. And then we have to respond. We have to respond by listening. We have to respond by offering encouraging words. In some cases, we may have to respond with providing support and services that are beyond what we can do, but we see that the needs for some of our young people are more severe than they are for others. So one of the ways we can begin to put mental health first is to recognize, to understand, to empathize, and then to respond. These are important steps, but it doesn't stop there. I oftentimes get the question, but how can we support our students? Give me the specifics of what it looks like in real time. And I think there are more steps and strategies that we all can use. And again, many of you are already using these kinds of approaches. I've seen some of the LA's best staff in action over the years, and some of you are amazing what you do with young people. And to that, I would say, continue doing that. And what does that mean? That means checking in with students often, asking how they're doing, asking how they're feeling. Do they need to talk? You can lend an ear. Sometimes it's also being mindful that some students are not able to quite articulate in words what they're going through, but their behaviors might tell us something different. So I maintain it's important for us to be prepared to expect different types of behavior from our students. But please let us not be in the mindset as we have been in days past and in years past to say that behavior that's quote unquote disruptive or bad means that children are just bad or misbehaving. In many ways, we must remember what psychologists have told us for years, and that is that all behavior is functional. So even as students engage in different types of behavior, what we must remember and understand is that sometimes those different types of behaviors are a plea for help. Sometimes those different types of behaviors are a cry for assistance. Sometimes those different types of behavior says, I need you to come talk to me, listen to me. Our students are communicating through their words, but also through their actions and behaviors. So we must make sure we're not engaging in punishing behavior when students are asking for help and support. I maintain that some of the very students that oftentimes get pushed away the most are the very students that we need to bring closer to us to make sure that they are being supported. We also have to listen and learn from our students. I think that they are going to tell us what they're thinking and feeling at times. We have to listen, we have to learn, we have to empathize, we have to ask questions, we have to probe, we have to query. And some of this may be uncomfortable because students might be in some very, very difficult emotional spaces. Some of the hurt may still be raw. We also have to understand that when students share with us, they may share some things with us that are oftentimes deeply disturbing about things that they have experienced in their households. You must remember, state mandated reporters, we have a responsibility that if students come to us and they share things that seem to rise to the level of abuse or neglect, we have to take that to our respective superiors and we have to make sure that those issues get reported. I raise that because what we're seeing in many of our households are a large number of economic stressors. We know when economic stressors tend to increase in our families, the levels of neglect tend to increase. And sadly, the levels of abuse, child abuse that is, also tends to increase. What we have learned from the Department of Children and Family Services is that during this pandemic, the number of cases of children being abused and or neglected has decreased by 50%. But let us be clear, just because we've seen a decrease in those numbers does not mean these incidents of abuse are not occurring. So we have to remain vigilant, watchful, protective, but also in querying mode to make sure that all students are safe. And oftentimes for many of our students, you are the ones who they feel most comfortable with. You are the ones whom they trust. You are the ones who they feel like can provide them safety and guidance. And so you must remember your roles as you engage in this work. We also have to try to see how we can reestablish routines and familiarity. What students like more than anything else is predictability. What's going to happen next? What can I expect tomorrow? And much of what you do as supporters of our young people, you've given them that sense of familiarity. You've given them that sense of consistency. You've given them that sense of routine that they know what's going to expect. They know what to expect Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Whether you're connecting with them virtually or when we ever get to the point where we can see each other in person, consistency will matter. Being there matters. Being someone who is going to be reliable is what kids are looking for. Your dependability builds trust, and with trust comes the ability to formulate relationships, and then relationships help us to increase the overall emotional health and well-being of our young people. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, let's be aware of our family stressors. Our young people are parts of a larger ecosystem. That ecosystem can be healthy in some parts and not so healthy in other parts. So when and where we can, we may have to find ourselves engaging in conversations with mothers, fathers, grandmothers, grandfathers, caregivers, aunts, uncles, sisters and brothers. The whole ecosystem may be hurting at times. So one of the ways we can support our students is to make sure we are also, when possible, availing ourselves to other family members who are going through very difficult times as we try to continue to maintain a priority on our safety, our health and well-being, but at the same time, also understand the economic realities that this pandemic has caused us all. What else can we do? I maintain this is a big one. We cannot respond negatively to challenging behaviors because sometimes the very students who are hurting the most, they come to us and we take steps that essentially push them further away from us. So as we see these, what I call challenging behaviors, please be mindful that these are not oftentimes children who are attempting to just make our lives difficult. These are the very students and young people who are oftentimes seeking our support. So we can't always take behavior personally. We have to have a short memory. What happens on Monday stays on Monday. We give every student a new chance and a new day to start herself, himself, or themselves on the next day. Always try to understand the root causes of behavior. That's important. Give students space to talk and express themselves and to be understanding of the fact that the way that some students might express themselves may not always be the ways that we think are appropriate, but might be the best way that students know how to express themselves. For some students, the need to move and self-soothe is important. Many students have oftentimes been cooped up in houses and they've not had a chance to go outside and play and run. So giving them that space to just take in the improvely new fresh air we have here in Los Angeles is vital. Constantly affirm our students. Let them know that we're going to be okay. Let them know that you are there for them. Make yourself available to talk and listen when they need to hear from adults who can help to give them some sense of what's going to happen next. Always try to de-escalate. There will be times where students begin to feel a sense of angst. There will be time when students feel a sense of uncertainty. There will certainly be time when students begin to feel a sense of anger and frustration. And sometimes they take that out on themselves. Sometimes they take that out on their peers. And sometimes they might even attempt to take that out on us. But our roles, our responsibilities is to make sure we are constantly in de-escalation mode. Part of what many of you all hopefully have been doing during this time is you learn how to engage in your own self-care, deep breathing, meditation, mindfulness. These are some steps and strategies that we might begin to share with our young people, helping them to understand what are some skills that they can use when they have these moments of uncertainty, when they have these moments of insecurity, when they have these moments days for us as adults where we have just not felt the motivation to get up and work. There are many days where we are just in real bad spaces because we're just so saddened to see what's happening around us. If we feel that way as adults, we can only imagine how our young people might feel. Affirm those feelings, but yet give them some strategies of how they can begin to sort of understand why they feel that way, affirm why they feel that way, but give them the tools to still be their best selves. And I think this is not just a one-time thing we do with our young people. These have to be continuous check-ins. And the students who we check in with the most are probably the students who are going to do the best. And I also maintain, while we talk about the students who are oftentimes labeled as challenging, I want to give you special sort of attention to the fact that we must be mindful of the students who are oftentimes the silent ones. The students who are silent, sometimes we assume that because they don't give us any problems or they don't cause us to have any challenges with them, that they must be fine. Sometimes it's the quiet ones who are going through the most turmoil. Sometimes it's the quiet ones who are going through the most angst and anxiety. Sometimes it's the quiet ones who are suffering from some severe bouts of depression. So I maintain that we must pay attention to the quiet ones just as much as we pay attention to the ones who are oftentimes grabbing for our attention. Our goal has got to be to make sure that we do not, and I repeat this with every fiber of my being, that we do not engage in the punishment of students during a time when they've already been emotionally punished. We have to help to uplift them, to affirm them, to reassure them that they're going to be fine. And we have to set the examples. We have to be the models to make sure that that is what we do. Eric mentioned earlier a book that is, I'm going to say, my favorite piece of work right now, a book that I'm going to plug unapologetically, because again, in this moment, what we are about is relationships. What we're about is connections. What we're about is empathy. And in this book that I was fortunate enough to be a part of, No More Teaching Without Positive Relationships, myself and my co-authors talk about what relationships look like, how students are oftentimes reluctant to engage in relationships at times with adults because frequently it's a matter of trust. But with consistency and transparency, you can start to formulate those relationships. When students feel like you are concerned about them more than just on the academic side, but you're curious about their interests, you want to learn about their desires, you want to pique their imagination, you want to hear about their hopes and dreams, that's how we form relationships. If you want to understand what makes the students excited, what their interests are, what their favorite meal is, what their favorite colors are, tell me about your home life. Tell me more about your sisters and brothers. Tell me how you spent Mother's Day. All these different facets of our students. Like our students come to us, they are full of energy. They have lots of imagination. They have some huge dreams and aspirations. And they have some of the most amazingly brilliant minds that you can ever begin to imagine. It's important for us to tap into that brilliance. Again, I don't think we can get to teaching. I don't think we will get to teaching until we begin to understand the value and the importance of authentic, sustaining relationships. You all know the saying that students don't care what you know until they know that you care. And there are students that we see every single day that for many of you, LA's Best, you might be the lone adult who is a consistent, concerned, and caring adult. And that is oftentimes the very thing that means the world to young people, knowing that you will listen, knowing that you are happy to see me today, knowing that you missed me when I wasn't here yesterday, knowing that you were the one who smiled and gave me a compliment about a new shirt or a new blouse, being the person who told me that you're just proud of the fact that I am someone who gets along with others well. Our words carry significant weight for young people. And I want you to understand that no words, no matter how powerful they are, can only do more than uplifting our students or sometimes tearing them down. Let's choose our words carefully. Let's be very intentional to let our students know that they are our most cherished possession. And I think the way we do that is not always just solely with our words, but it's with our actions. It's saying that we're going to do what we say we're going to do. It's being there for them. But that also doesn't mean that there aren't going to be times where we don't hold them to high standards and we let them know we expect more of them. So I need us to understand that while we're talking about formulating and teaching through relationships, these relationships mean that there are times where we have to tell students that there are certain types of behaviors that are not acceptable. There are certain ways of being that we're not going to tolerate because we don't want young people hurting other young people. And I say that because you all know the saying, hurt people hurt people. And if we're not careful, we will come back from this pandemic and lots of our young people will still be reeling from the effects of what this virus has done. So we must be prepared to understand some of the challenges that they might be facing. But relationships have to be at the forefront of what we're going to be doing moving forward. So to that end, before I prepare to close and we go to some questions and answer, I want to make you aware of the fact that we now all have to be mindful of the resources that are available here in Los Angeles County. I want to give a big shout out to LA's Best because on your website, you have some amazing resources. And I think we have to understand that lots of our families are right here in Los Angeles and just don't know about the untapped resources that are very much within their reach. And what you see here are some just a handful of the kinds of resources that can be available for families, for digital access. We have to be mindful of the need for some families who are looking for intervention because they might be in some type of intimate partner violence situation. We know that there are over 30 million people who have filed for unemployment. So there are families looking for financial help. There have been report after report after report that says that families are in need of food. We have food banks across the county of Los Angeles. Sadly enough, we are going to see an increase in all likelihood of the number of families experiencing homelessness. So LA County has a number of resources for those families who are experiencing homelessness. We have to become aware of all the resources, or at least not all, but many of the resources that exist. Many of you have not only formulated relationships with the students that you serve, but to your credit, you've also formed relationships with their parents and caregivers. And sharing these resources can be another way to fortify those relationships. One of my favorite and one of the most useful resources is the 211 hotline across LA County, which serves as a hub for a host of different resources. If there's nothing else, having families know that 211 can be a valuable lifeline is something that we should all be constantly repeating to our families and to even some of our students. The Department of Mental Health has oftentimes provided a valuable set of resources. Telehealth is on the rise. Families need someone to talk to. Children need someone to talk to, and there are services there. Their guide for immigrant Californians because there have been issues raised around immigration status. Families are fearful. They're worried about deportation. And that should not be their concerns right now. Their concerns should be the safety, health, and well-being of their children. So these are some resources they can use. And then again, there are a host of other resources for education, food, technology, safety for families. I want us to make sure that we have these resources at our fingertips. Again, LA has some of the most amazing food resources banks across the entire state of California. CalFresh, where you can apply for food assistance, renter protection programs. There's lots of misinformation out there about people who are fearful of being evicted. And we have to be able to help our families by helping them understand what's at their disposal. So I want to say this. I want to say thank you. I want to say that what you do every single day, it not only changes lives, but nowadays what you are doing may help to save lives. I want you to understand that the significance and the importance of what you do is beyond words. Every single day when you stand in the gap and you are there for students, you make a difference. You make an impact. What we have to recognize is that in this moment, the very young people that you are there for today will come back to you 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, and they will say, thank you for being there when I needed you most. Thank you for being consistent. Thank you for listening. Thank you for telling me that we would get through this. Our children are going to hang on our words in more ways than we could ever imagine. They're going to look for our counsel and our advice in more ways than we've ever imagined. So I want to say that as you do this, you do it from the bottom of your heart. You do it with all the conviction and concern and love and passion and care that I think makes you so cut out for this work. But I also want to remind you, as you do this work, make sure you're also engaging in your own self-care, because we're all human. And many of you are doing this work. You're caring for other people's children, yet you have your own children that you have to care for. You have sisters and brothers that you're caring for. You have parents or grandparents. Many of you are wearing multiple hats and you're servicing lots of different people. And for that, you are to be commended. But you also have to recognize you cannot care for others to that degree if you're not caring about yourselves. So please make sure you engage in your own self-care. Take care of your health and your mental well-being, because if you're not strong for yourself, you can't be strong for others. We need everybody in this fight. We need all hands on deck. We need everyone doing the heavy lifting that's going to be required to make sure we support our children. If our children are better, our children thrive, our families thrive. When our families thrive, our community thrives. And we are in Los Angeles, which I think is the best city in the entire world. We have to set the example. We need to lead the way. When Los Angeles does it right, the rest of the world will get it right. So to that end, I want to say LA's best. I have so much admiration, so much respect for what you do every single day. I want to thank you all 2,000 plus of you, for being in the trenches, for rolling up your sleeve and doing what I call not the hard work, but the heart work, the HEART. The hard work is what will make a difference and get us through these challenging times. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And let's continue to do this work. Be safe, be well, and let's be there for our children.
Dr. Howard, thank you so much. That was incredibly inspiring and also informative. And it strikes me that it was such a wise choice, if I do say so myself, for us to connect, because so much of what you covered deepened the commitment that our staff have been making these past several weeks as they engage in online professional development, as they connect with each other to plan for the unknown future. And so it reminds me that I also want to shout out not only the folks who have been working to distribute food, but all of the LA's Best staff who have been really working so hard to use this time wisely by engaging in professional development and connecting with each other. And thanks to the staff development team and all of the operations team for gearing up those resources. Dr. Howard, we had over 80 questions submitted. So we're going to go over them one by one. We're going to be here until we get through all of them.
I'm here.
So we can only address a couple, but I do want to say something to the whole group before we get into any of the specifics. Several of the questions submitted are not exactly in Dr. Howard's wheelhouse, but are more operations questions or questions about plans of the district and things like that. Debbie, our fearless leader, our chief operating officer, is planning to create a video to answer a lot of those questions, and that'll be out in the coming days. So some of those things will be addressed. Please don't think we're ignoring you, but we want to sort of stay within Dr. Howard's area of expertise. And we're only going to get to a few of these questions, but hopefully you will be able to address some of these as you continue to engage in that online learning and connection with each other. And I can also tell you that we'll be studying this list of questions and that it can help to inform the planning process so that we can make sure that these things are addressed in the LMS and the online learning system. So the first question that I wanted to pose to you, Dr. Howard, was the simplest one, but in some ways the most poignant. Will school ever be the same again?
No, schools will never be the same again. And for some people that may sadden us, but I think that this gives us an opportunity to reinvent schools, because whether or not we want to recognize it or not, School as it had been constructed was not working for all of our students. Schools as it had been prior to this pandemic was not servicing students well. Schools as we knew it before was not nurturing students to the degree that many students needed to be nurtured. So I don't think schools will be the same. What they will look like, only we will determine that. I think we will have input. I think our collective conviction will help to shape what schools will look like. I think that distance learning is here to stay. I think we are learning that some kids are in a thrive mode by distance learning. Some students like the flexibility and the autonomy and the independence of being able to work virtually. Other students are not. Other students still are not connected, still don't have access. So we're going to have to rethink and reimagine the ways in which we structure schools to be more supportive and more mindful of the needs that our students have. And so it's going to look very different. What it looks like, only time will tell.
Thank you. The next question that I want to address is, sorry, I was just handed a note by my fearless assistant, my 12-year-old daughter, that made me laugh. This is what we're all going through working from home. Anyway, the next question is, how can I help the students so they can help each other with this epidemic? And I chose that question because I think it reflects a real value of LA's Best. And to the person that submitted that, I want to thank you, because that really is what we're about. We don't have all the answers, and we're not going to have all the answers, but we can help students help each other, and we can help our community help itself. So that's the question for you, Dr. Howard. How can I help the students so they can help each other in this epidemic?
Yeah, I think one of the things we're going to have to do, and I think that our students are so intuitive. I think our students are so amazingly brilliant that I think in this moment, they're wanting to help one another. So I think what we can do is continuously reinforce what we've learned from the medical health experts, what we've learned from the scientists, that we have to engage in all of the different types of practices that we've been told help to keep people safe. Social distancing will obviously be a part of our vocabulary and part of our behavior for the foreseeable future. So we can talk to students about why social distancing matters. We have to talk to students about why we're wearing masks, because that's going to help keep us healthy. But also, I think the more we talk to our students about why we have to be in this together, how we have to help support one another, I think our students understand this. My 5-year-old nephew was here talking just a few weeks ago. We were engaging in social distancing. He had his mask on. And I was curious as to, what do 5-year-olds think about this moment? And I asked him why he had his mask on. He said, because I don't want to get you sick, Uncle. And so the fact that kids understand that, I think, is what we have to bring into our learning spaces. We want our kids to understand that they don't want to make other kids sick. They don't want their friends to be sick. And we're learning some deeply disturbing things about how this virus is affecting young people. I don't think we want to necessarily scare our children, but we want them to know that we all have to be safe, that adults have to be safe, that children have to be safe, and that we all play a role. And this is the beauty of this. I've watched for years how many young people, as young as 5 and 6 years old, have really kind of gotten behind the importance of environmental sort of, well-being, how to take care of our planet. My 5-year-old niece told me about 6 months ago, when I accidentally put a recyclable bottle in the trash can. She said, "Uncle, you can't put that in the trash. You have to put it in the recycling bin because you're going to hurt our planet." The fact that we have that kind of an awareness around the environment for children at a young age, I think, is the same kind of intensity we're going to have around how we collectively respond to this virus. I think young people oftentimes set the examples better than older people do. And so I think we have to continue to communicate to children why we're doing what we're doing and asking them to be careful about what they do. And I think the majority of our children will comply as long as we're helping to model that same behavior.
So as much as we've talked about the importance of positive relationships and social connection, LA's Best is all about being a balanced program. And obviously we all also care about our students' academic success and their academic motivation. So this question comes from that side, and I picked it and I appreciate it because I have a tendency to overcorrect and be so focused on the social emotional aspect of it that I might discount some of the academic needs. And I don't think that's fair either. So this helps me, this reminds me. So I wanted to ask you, it says, Dr. Howard, How can we motivate our children to stay focused on their education while stuck at home?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And it's a balancing act because it's going to look different for every student. Because here's the reality, some of our students are just going to have a hard time finding the motivation to really make their education a priority. Look, I'm teaching classes at UCLA right now. I talk to undergraduate students, master's students, PhD students who are saying that they just have a hard time focusing in on their academics with so much going on around them. So I think our students are going to be in that same space. But I think we have to, A, give them the space to talk about what they're feeling, give them the space to articulate whatever frustration or whatever fears that they might have, recommend whatever supports whatever they might need. But at the same time, I think we have to say that one of the things that helps many people is to begin to try to resume some type of normalcy in these abnormal times. And for some people, being able to focus and think about other things other than the virus helps them to deal with the current state of affairs. Sometimes reading a novel for a class, sometimes engaging in some academic task gives you just a brief reprieve. It might be only 30 minutes, it might be 45 minutes, but it's going to take baby steps. And so I think what we have to do, to your point, Eric, is we have to tell young people that, look, we understand that their health and well-being is always going to be first and foremost, but we also want them to understand that their academic and intellectual growth is also going to be a priority too, and that the more they can begin to feel comfortable to begin to engage in that. Some kids have not skipped a beat because they don't want to hear all the negative news about this coronavirus, and they've immersed themselves in school. Others are slowly coming around to that point, and some are a little bit further behind. I just think we have to be a little bit patient here and let kids tell us when they're ready, and yet still maintain the importance of their academic growth and development.
We have time for one or two more. I'm
Let's
going to
do
make the
it.
most of this. One of us submitted, I appreciate you mentioning that it is a taboo for some cultures to discuss mental health. It is at times easier to get our students to open up about the hardships, but it's difficult where it stems, which are our parents. How can we help parents?
Yeah, another excellent question. I mean, this is one of the unspoken dialogues in many communities of color across the county, is that we have oftentimes been socialized to not talk about how we feel. And that is, I think, to our detriment. And so I think what we have to do is we have to begin to model that for some of our parents. I think what we have to do is talk to our parents about the fact that, you know what, today I was just not feeling my best. Or today I woke up and I was really feeling kind of down in the dumps. I was really depressed over the weekend when I thought about some things. I think the more we start to normalize sharing how we feel, I think it can become contagious, because then other people will think, I'm not the only one who feels this way. I'm not the only one who's feeling uncertain right now. I think we have to be the models of talking about our emotions, talking about how we feel. And I also, if I can go one step further, I think in our society, men in particular are oftentimes socialized in a way that we're told not to talk about what we feel and what we need. I think we have to model for all of our children, but I'm always concerned about our boys, because we tell our boys to toughen up, to not cry.
Mhm.
And I think that is not the message that we want to send. I think we have to tell our children it's okay to cry. It's okay to be angry. And I think the more we tell them that, hopefully that they will begin to set that model for the adults. But yes, a lot of adults, we are in the model of having to change our mindsets and change our attitudes around mental health, because we're going through lots of real difficult emotions right now. And I think we need to give people the license and the permission to feel, the license and the permission to express themselves, and basically the license and the permission to emote. We are human beings. That's what we do. We're emotional individuals, and we cannot suppress and suppress and suppress, because when we do, we all reach a boiling point and those emotions explode, and oftentimes some not so good things happen. So I think we just have to be willing to talk. The more we talk, the more we hopefully can begin to destigmatize it, and then we begin to normalize the importance of mental health.
Thank you. I'm gonna want to wrap up on a positive and hopeful note. So I'm going to wrap up on one final question. The question is, how might my work contribute to long-term change that takes a compassionate approach?
Oh, you're investing in our long-term change. That is our young people. So I can't think of any other work that we can do to commit ourselves to long-term change. Every young people you touch, every young person you touch, every young person you inspire, every young person that you give a loving, caring hug to, every young person that you give a smile on his or her or their face is an impact on lasting change. Here's what we must understand about the work of LA's Best. This is what I call faith-based work. Not faith-based work in the sense of sort of organized religion, but I'm saying we are planting seeds in our most cherished possession, our young people, that are going to be nurtured and watered and placed in the sunshine. But when they blossom, when they grow, we will all take pride in what we've helped to build in. So we have to do the work knowing we're not going to always see the results tomorrow. We're not going to always see the results next week. But many folks who have done this work for LA's Best know what it's like to have a young person come back 5 years after you've been with that child, and that student tells you, you were always my favorite teacher. You were my favorite staff member. You were my favorite helper. That's when we know we're making an impact and we're making a difference. So I maintain that the biggest way we can make an impact on our future is to continue to uplift and nurture and support and encourage and believe in our children. If we do that, I think we're well on our way.
Dr. Howard, thank you so much for doing this today. We're so grateful to you. I learned a lot, and I feel like my battery's a little bit charged up. Certainly been running low. I really appreciate you speaking with us today. I appreciate you being there for us for the long term and all the work that you do for the children of Los Angeles. And to everybody, I want to say thank you for being who you are. You know, thank you for working for an organization that is built on love. You know, I appreciate what you said just now about the distinction of it, us being based on faith, not in a religious sense, but in the sense that, you know, our focus is building a brighter future. And every single child in LA's Best and not in LA's Best, every single child in Los Angeles can be part of that brighter future. And everybody at LA's Best is dedicated to that. So from all of us, from Debbie and myself, from Dr. Howard, Michael Funk, and everyone at LA's Best, I want to say to everyone on this call and everyone who watches it later, you have our undying gratitude. We're here for you. We're grateful to you, and want to challenge you to continue to think about who we need to be for our children now and who we need to be and become for them as we are finally able to welcome them back into school and back into community. So thank you, Dr. Howard. Thank you to all of you. And you know, hopefully we'll have a chance to do this again sometime, but more than that, hopefully we'll all be able to be in a room together before too long. Thanks, and that wraps up our first ever LA's Best virtual town hall.